Well, good afternoon. Welcome to the College of Business. My name is Kevin Gwinner. I'm the Dean of the College, and we're excited to have you in attendance today. We actually have a bit of an overflow crowd down the hall. This is our distinguished lecture series. It's sponsored by Commerce Bank and the William T. Kemper Foundation. And in attendance today, we have Mr. Sean Drew. Sean, would you wave your hand there? Sean's our local branch president here, market president in Manhattan. Appreciate your support of this lecture series. There are a handful of iconic companies that have stood the test of time, and certainly Hormel Foods is one of those, rarest of rare organizations. 131 years young, it is legendary in the business world as one of the top 5 Fortune 500 global branded food companies in the world, with over $12 billion in annual revenue across more than 75 countries worldwide. You know its brands. Its brands are well-known household names, including Planters, Skippy, Spam, Hormel Natural Choice, Applegate, Justin's, Columbus, Holy Guacamole, one of my favorite ones, Hormel Black Label, and more than 30 other beloved brands. We're going to show you a quick video that will give you a view of some of Hormel's great food brands. If you'd run the video, please.
Gee whiz, look at all them Hormel cars. Wonder what's in them and where they're going.
You're always welcome at Hormel.
Leading the company is Chairman and CEO Jim Snee, whose career spans more than 30 years with Hormel Foods. During his tenure as CEO, he has led the company's continuing evolution as a global branded food company and its growing reputation as an award-winning corporate citizen by focusing on the food the company makes and the difference it makes in the world. Under Jim's leadership, the company has been named to virtually every list, from most trusted company to most admired to most responsible, and even one of the best internship programs in the world. Jim is active in numerous industry and nonprofit boards and organizations, and has spent a great deal of time focusing on equity in education and food security in communities where the company's team members live and work. It is this personal commitment at the intersection of the company's global impact efforts that earned Jim the honor of being named Responsible CEO of the Year just last year. Delivering results and doing good for the world. It's my pleasure to introduce Jim Snee, Chairman of the Board, President and CEO of Hormel Foods.
Thank you, Kevin. Very nice. Thank you.
Our format today will be a question and answer interview format. And Dr. Olivia Ladoroso is going to be doing the asking of questions. There will also be an opportunity for you in the audience to ask questions at the end, so you might be thinking about what your questions are. And we also, following our lecture today, at the end of the hall in the classroom, outside the atrium that direction, we're going to have a short reception that you're all invited to. Lots of great food down there, so we hope you join us there. Olivia, take it away.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, Olivia, we should tell them also that if the questions are really hard, I'll probably be phoning a friend.
And they're your friends, right?
Some of you, yeah. I've got my purple on, right? So you're all friends now. I may be reaching out to some of you, so be prepared.
Excellent. Thank you. And maybe there'll be some additional swag for them if they
never know.
Answer that phone call.
How were the corn nuts? Yeah?
Pretty good.
Good.
Excellent. So as Kevin was saying, Hormel Foods has been in business for 131 years. That's incredible. And I also hear that you began your career with Hormel right out of college, and you're now the CEO. So, you know, one of you, if you have aspirations and dreams to be the CEO of a company, I mean, it might be that company that you start with right out of college. Can you talk about your career? What did that look like?
Yep, so I started my career with Hormel Foods coming up on 34 years ago. And this is the part where somebody stands up and says, that's not possible, you don't look that old. But I see none of you did that. And I know what that means. And I'd love to tell you that when I graduated from New Mexico State, has anybody ever heard of New Mexico State University? All right, a few show of hands. Thank you for making me feel better. I'd love to tell you when I graduated that I had this incredibly well laid out vision and plan for what I was going to do, where I was going to go, the jobs that I was going to have along the way, but I'd be lying to you. Because what was my number one priority when I graduated in 1989? What was my number one priority? To get paid. Right? To get a job and to get a paycheck. And I got lucky. I got really lucky. I had multiple job offers that I had to evaluate, and I picked Hormel Foods. And along the way, I've been able to have multiple careers within a career. So I started out as a salesperson, running a sales territory. I had an opportunity to be a marketer and run brand management. Then I got sales management experience. And then I got some general management experience. And then I ran purchasing. And then I became the head of international. And then became president and CEO. And so all along the way, different experiences, different exposures, and not every job was a promotion. And it's hard to sometimes accept that because we all want to do more. We want the promotion. We want the next title. We want more money. But I will tell you that sometimes along the way, instead of taking the step forward, taking a step to the side can be really, really powerful. Mm-hmm. And some of the things that I learned by taking a step to the side to do a different job that I'd never had exposure to really set me up for success in this job because I have a better understanding of how the total company works. And I think, Olivia, your comment is spot on. One of the questions that I get a lot from people is, well, when did you know you wanted to be CEO? And my answer is, I didn't. I never had that on my radar. It was when my predecessor, the former CEO, told me about a job he wanted me to take. And he said, I'm not going to make any promises, but you need to know that you could be a candidate for my job someday. Wow. I was blown away. That was not on my radar. And so that idea of getting a job, starting a career, working as hard as you can, being curious, asking questions, being responsible, being motivated, being a good team member, although it all sounds cliche, it's really important. And so as you think about, for those of you who are embarking on a career, it's exactly right. You could be, if that's what you think you want to do someday, you could be a CEO of a pretty big company. Wow.
And so would you say that those skills like being a good team member, being curious, those are some of the skills that you would recommend that these business students right now think about honing? Are there any other skills that you would recommend or opportunities that you would recommend that they take advantage of?
Yeah, I mean, and again, I know some of these are cliche and you hear them from probably every class or every speaker, but I will tell you they're true.
Yeah.
And it is, when I think about our best team members, the people that I look at and say, they get it. They're the ones who are creating solutions because they're curious. and they want to know more about the business, A, to know more about it, but then B, how does that help them do their job better or differently or solve a problem? And that's important, really, really important. And then, you know, this idea of being curious and never stop learning, right? I mean, you know what you know in school, you'll get into the workforce, and I will tell you that you will be overwhelmed. You'll be overwhelmed, and you'll be like, wow. I tell the story that I remember when I started my first month on the job, I thought, I'm not smart enough to be here. These people are all so smart. They know what they're doing. I'll never know what they know. But you have to challenge yourself to learn and to ask questions. It's the curiosity piece, but beyond just asking the question is learning it and learning more and learning faster. And that's how you really become more confident as a team member. And time and confidence, in my estimation, will change your career. Because as you learn more, you become confident and you get more experiences with time. And that confidence and time, when they get together, it makes for team members who are incredibly successful and can do absolutely whatever they want.
You know, I have worked with Hormel Foods for over a decade, probably. So some of my best friends come from Hormel, and we've sent a lot of K-State students to Hormel Foods. And, you know, I think part of it is the culture that you have at your company and the culture that we have here at K-State really meshes very, very well. I've heard that you share your profits with team members and you have programs that give a free college education to the children of your team members. You were named one of the world's best employers. Can you talk about the culture at Hormel and how important that is?
So, how many of you are seniors? Show of hands. Any seniors? How many of you have jobs waiting for you? And for those that do, what do you know about the culture of the company that you're going to?
I guess the biggest thing is like the company that I'm going to is people. I did an internship with them.
Okay.
So I worked with the other interns. I enjoyed working with them. It was a job that allowed me to move up. So I know that if I stay with the company for like 5, 10 years, I'll eventually be in a position, higher title, more money, more responsibility. But I think the most important thing is a job that lets me work with people. Because I think working in the industry where you get to interact with them.
So opportunity for advancement, you got to work with people. Who else? Oh, look, some free giveaways. Anybody else want to answer the question? For those that, I'm just curious, I mean, as you thought about the company you're going to, what do you know about their culture? What's important to you? Yes, sir. Okay.
Great benefits.
So, PTO, remote. One of the things that's really important to our company when we think about culture, it's this word that we call accountability. And part of being part of a team is to be able to hold yourself and to hold the team accountable and to hold the company accountable. And so when we think about that, it's, you know, how do we interact with one another? Do we do what we say we're going to do? And if we don't, do you have a culture that's strong enough for me to say, what's your name? Alex? Alex, you said you were going to have that spreadsheet done on Thursday. The team really needs it. You didn't get it done. And I'm not really concerned about what happened, but tell me when you can have it done.
I can have it done by Tuesday.
Great. Thanks, Alex. So when we get the team back together on Tuesday, we'll expect you to have that spreadsheet. Okay.
Good job, Alex. get that done. Don't be late next
Tomorrow's Tuesday, Alex.
Tomorrow's Tuesday.
You may not be able to stay for this whole thing. But I think the important thing is, right, in our culture, we know each other. You build the relationship. And now we're going to hold each other accountable, right? We're a team. Alex has a role to play. We need him to do that work, and the team's counting on him. It's not putting undue pressure on Alex, right? We're asking him to do what he's supposed to do to help the team succeed. And at Hormel Foods, you'll see that across the entire organization. And it's not only how do we work together as a team, holding each other accountable, but then also how do you solve problems together, right? And how do you create more opportunities together because you know each other, and it is this level of accountability builds trust. It's not me being punitive against Alex, and then I go and say, man, you see what Alex did? No, it's Alex. We need you to help lift this team up, right? You have a role to play, and I think people appreciate that, and they know that they're counted on. They know that they're trusted. And that's, to me, what people really want when they go to work, is they want to be respected, they want to be appreciated, and they want to be trusted. Right? And you can do that in a culture of accountability.
That's great. You know, making sure that people know that you need them and that they have the support that they need, as well as they're being challenged to meet those goals and deadlines. You really feel part of a team.
Yep.
We saw in the video before we started all of the brands, or many of the brands that are under the Hormel Foods umbrella. Spam is 85 years old. They use the term iconic all the time.
Who's had Spam? Ooh, that's awesome. You need to hand out a lot more soccer balls for that. That's really impressive.
It is, it is. And I hear that it's even on menus in some very fancy restaurants. So that's incredible. Maybe that will be on my list of things to do. Can you talk about why brands matter? And how does Hormel Food think about your brand portfolio?
You know, you saw just a small sampling of the different brands and businesses that we have. And, you know, when Kevin introduced the company, he talked about it as a branded food company, right? And that's a global branded food company. And that's how we think about ourselves. So it's not just a food company. The brand piece is really important because that's how consumers connect with the company, that's how they connect with the food, that's how they connect with the products. And, you know, it's so much more than just making bacon or making Spam or making Planters, right? It's what does that brand stand for? And how do consumers connect with it in a way that's different for you, different for Kevin, different for Alex, different for me? And that's what's important. And so we talk a lot about, well, the antithesis of brands is private label. And what does private label mean to anybody? Go ahead, say it. Cheap. Cheap, right? Okay, if that's what you want your brand to stand for, you're accomplishing it. Congratulations, right? We're not thinking about that. We're thinking about the quality of the brand. We're thinking about the responsibility of the brand. In some cases, some of our more modern brands, right, what they're doing from a social aspect, which is becoming more and more important with consumers. And so brands are incredibly complex. And so for those of you, when you were sitting in marketing class and thought, you know, we're talking about brands, who cares? Brands do matter. Brands matter to consumers in a really, really big way. They matter to us. And we're not a global private label food company. We're a global branded food company. And I would argue that brands have become even more important since the pandemic because it was that source of, again, connection and comfort when consumers really needed something to be able to latch onto with all the chaos that was happening around them.
You mentioned having good corporate governance and being trusted, and we do have courses in the business school around ESG, environmental, social, and corporate governance. And so I know that's really important to Hormel Foods. Kevin mentioned you were named Most Responsible CEO of the Year. how do you balance your corporate social responsibility with also, you know, good business? How do you think about that?
Just like that.
Just like that?
Just like that, right? Because it's good business.
Yeah.
And the idea that it's something new or different or a burden that society has put on the company is wrong. You know, we're a $12 billion company. That's a big company. And so we do have, it's kind of like the athlete that's, you know, the real popular athlete that says he's not a role model. I always have a problem with that because I say as a $12 billion company, you have a responsibility, right? And we do have a responsibility to make sure that our plants are run properly, that we're reducing the amount of water that we use in our plants so that we're not part of the problem when we think about water availability. When you think about the S in ESG, right, the social part and society and communities, we have a responsibility to take care of our communities where we live and work. I mean, we have team members that are living there, and we want to make sure that we do our part to make that community, that society, as successful as possible for them. And then, you know, the governance is just simply that, right? Are you running your business the right way? And I would tell you that, you know, governance probably doesn't have as big of a, I should say governance has a bigger role here in the US than it does in Europe. You know, when you get to some of the European countries, they're all about environmental and the social piece, probably less about the governance. Here, we started with governance, good governance, which I think is a great thing, and now we're figuring out and evolving into the E and the S. And so it is just what you said. It's just good business, and it's our responsibility, and it's the right thing to do. The part that I don't know yet, and I'll be interested, because what I hear is all of you are demanding good corporate responsibility in the products that you buy. How many of you make purchasing decisions based on that? Show of hands. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So far fewer than I would have expected. You know, when you hear it in the media and you hear some of the pundits, they'll say, well, these companies better get their act together or they're not going to be in business because every single consumer is going to make a purchasing decision on ESG. And I think that will continue to come. If I came back next year, there'll be more hands. But I don't think it's as broad-based today as maybe some people think. But we do have that responsibility to the E, the S, and the G.
Yeah. Maybe we could dig a little bit deeper into the E part of it and talk about climate change and as being a leader in this industry and a good example, can you talk about your goals around the environmental piece and how innovation is at the center of those goals?
Yeah. So it's not anything new. And if we go back, oh gosh, more than a decade, we've had a lot of goals in each of our plants. So our manufacturing facilities really are where we have our biggest impact on the environment. And the biggest impact I mentioned a little while ago is water. I mean, it takes a lot of water to run a food manufacturing facility. Not just the water in the process, the water in the cleanup, because we want to maintain very sanitary conditions. And we've always had very clearly defined goals to make sure that we're reducing energy usage, water usage, how much we're sending to landfills, because we want to make sure that we minimize that as well. So we've had pretty clearly defined environmental goals. But again, as this ESG journey has continued, right, it's all about science-based targets now. And that, I think, is a really good thing because the goals and the objectives and the measurements are going to be very quantifiable. And so companies aren't going to be able to necessarily game the system over time. And I think that's really, really important when we think about the responsibility that we have to the environment, to the climate. to make sure that, again, I'm big on doing what you say you're going to do and being held accountable to it. Science-based targets will do just that. And so we're in the process of getting our science-based targets approved, but also knowing that there's going to have to be innovation and automation along the way. And so it's not just going to be using less water and spraying a little less here. I mean, there's some amazing technology and some innovation that's on the horizon that will help tremendously to make sure that we hit those science-based targets.
Well, Hormel Foods being 131 years old, you've talked about the innovation in technology. Do you think that is one of the biggest evolutions in your industry, or is it consumer preferences? Is it how we purchase?
My personal belief is it's technology.
Technology?
Yeah, I mean, and you don't have to go that far back. And if you think about what we were talking about 6, 7, 8 years ago, you know, we thought e-commerce was going to get bigger, and how big was it going to get? How fast was it going to get that big? And then what was the next generation? And so a lot of companies, us included, had to invest in those capabilities and technologies because most companies, especially in the food space, were behind the curve. And then COVID happened. And it was, you maybe can't get to the grocery store, and all of a sudden you do have to pick up your groceries. And the only way to be able to pick up the groceries is to order online. And boy, aren't you glad you made those technology investments? I know I was. And so I think we saw that pendulum move really, really fast to what we call click and collect, right? So you click your order and then you go collect it yourself. And that's here to stay, right? I mean, that's not going away. Retailers have to figure out how to make it more profitable for them. But I think that's been incredibly successful. The thing that hasn't quite played out is some of the grocery delivery, right? And I shouldn't say it hasn't played out. It's playing out, but not as fast as I think a lot of people thought it would. Clearly, DoorDash is an example of one that's doing pretty well. And you can think of all the different companies that are out there that are doing it, but I don't know that that's happened, again, as fast as people thought. And I think, like I said, the click and collect piece is here to stay and will continue to grow incrementally. But that, to me, is the biggest single change in consumer behavior. It hasn't been necessarily a shift in products that maybe some thought would happen as well.
I wish we had the grocery pickup when my son was an infant. It would have just changed my life, but I'm very glad that we have it now, and I'm glad it's going to be here to stay. You talked about COVID, and of course, we all remember the supply chain issues. Can you talk about those continued supply chain issues and what that looks like for a global consumer goods, packaged good company? And you have, being a global business, you have so many different inputs, so many different ingredients coming from all over the world, I assume, as well as packaging. So how has that supply chain volatility affected you, and how did you respond?
It's been nonstop for the last 3 years. So the young lady who gave us our tour, who's supply chain, there you are. You're guaranteed a job.
Oh, hey.
You will never have to worry about collecting a paycheck. When we think about the supply chain journey that we've been on, and I had a chance to talk to President Linton before I came here, and I told him when COVID hit, there were 3 things that we focused on as an organization. And it was, we had to keep our team members safe. And it was easy for me. I'm a white-collar office guy. But we were sending 15,000 people a day into plants, shoulder to shoulder, to manufacture the food that we needed. And they didn't have a choice. They had to go to work. So we had to keep them safe. we had to make sure we had enough money to run the business, right? We've got a really strong balance sheet, but when I'm sitting there watching tens of thousands of jobs be eliminated or furloughed, I was scared. And it's like, I don't know what's going to happen to our business. We need money to run the business. So we went out and we borrowed $1 billion that we had never done anything like that before. And then our third thing was we want to keep every single person employed. We didn't want to be one of those furloughs. We wanted to make sure that we took care of our team members. And we did all three things.
Wow.
So we're still really, really proud of that. But then, all of a sudden, what happened? Right? Well, COVID became more widespread. We had some government stimulus. We had people leave the workforce. It became more difficult to find workers in the plants. Yeah. And that was hard because the demand was there. It was frustration because we couldn't manufacture. We didn't have the supply. And then when we did have people, all those suppliers that are sending packaging, that are sending ingredients, that maybe were driving the trucks or operating the warehouses, they weren't available for us when we needed them. And so it became this incredible spider web, and that's why supply chain is going to be a focal area for a really long time, because I don't think all the supply chain bumps have worked their way out. And so we're still battling that. On any given day. We'll have ingredients that we need that don't show up.
Right.
You know, and there are things that have gotten better, but there's still some things that aren't back to where they were. And that is still, in my mind, the biggest single impact of COVID, that supply chain disruption that is still taking a few more years to work out.
It's really about problem solving, right? So if anyone out here is interested in solving problems, supply chain might be a really good fit for you. And hey, guaranteed jobs, right?
Hint, hint.
So you have operations in China and Brazil. So of course, you know, the different responses to COVID there probably just made things even more complicated. Our world is incredibly connected. There's a globalization in brands sort of generally. How do you think about Hormel Foods' international businesses and the challenges that you face operating outside of the U.S.?
I mean, think about what's happened in China the last 6 months, right? And everything that we went through 3 years ago, it's now you're hitting the replay button, right? Because they went from severe lockdown to wide open, and everybody has COVID. And nobody can work in the plant because they're sick, and nobody's going out to eat because they need to stay home. So it's been kind of this Groundhog Day event where it just, you know, something different just keeps happening. But all that being said, I mean, those still are markets of opportunity. And we're in China and Brazil for different reasons. And this is, you know, how we think about the businesses we're in, is China, as still an emerging economy, affords us incredible opportunity. And so the Chinese consumer their income levels have grown. They're great consumers in that they love to spend money both on luxury goods, they love to spend it on food away from home. And so it's been really, really good for us over the years, and we've seen really good, steady growth. The Brazil market and we've been in China for over 20 years. The Brazil market is different, where we made a really small acquisition because we didn't know anything about it. And it had a lot of those same attributes as China, where maybe not the same income levels, but really good consumers that love to spend money and would love to increase or to upgrade the quality of their goods, whether it was luxury goods or food. And we saw that as an opportunity, but we really didn't know anything about it. So we made this small investment to buy a company, and it's done for us everything we wanted it to do, but we've learned how hard it is to do business in Brazil. Our board of directors told us it's going to be hard to do business in Brazil, and guess what? they were right. But that's okay, because that was our strategy going in. I said, we really need to learn about this market before we go in and spend $1 billion. Let's spend $100 million and learn along the way.
Sure.
So we're still very committed to international, but it's for different reasons in different parts of the world.
Yeah, that makes sense. And when you're thinking about, I want to go back thinking about COVID and safety, and commend you for keeping all of your employees on payroll and keeping them safe. That's incredible with all of the layoffs that we saw. I just think that's fantastic.
Well, thank you.
You must have a lot of trust within your company, and that really was built and fostered, I'm sure, as they went through this journey of COVID working for you. Also, considering trust, consumers have to trust that their products are safe, right? Can you talk a little bit about trust and those expectations and how important that is for your company?
Yeah, it goes through everything that we do. And so what did I say earlier, that every team member, every employee, when you're going to work and you have a career, what are the 3 things that everybody wants? You want to be respected, appreciated, and trusted, right? So team members want to be trusted. They want to trust the company. Consumers absolutely want to trust the company for what we stand for, but they have to trust the company when it comes to food safety. People ask me all the time, what's the one thing that keeps you up at night? And again, that's a word I like to use, but it has become somewhat cliche because you say it time and time again, is food safety. If we manufacture a product that's not safe and it gets out into the marketplace, that can have a catastrophic effect on the company and the 20,000 team members. So nothing is more important than food safety, which ultimately is that trust connection between us and the consumers. They love all the other things that, Planter stands for. They love the ESG elements and the corporate responsibility. But that element of trust on the food safety side, that's foundational. That's absolute. And so you can really start to see how that thread of trust goes across everything that we do as an organization. And it's no different than your relationships with your friends or your family. Right? You start with trust, and when you violate it or breach it, you lose it in a hurry, and it's hard to get back.
Jim, I have a question for you, another question, but I'm going to sort of prime the audience so that they can be thinking of questions that they may have for you. So when we're ready for that, there are a couple microphones at the stairs, so if you could share your name, your major, and your question. You talked about innovation and technology and how that has been an incredible impact. How are companies leveraging data and analytics in ways that maybe you couldn't even imagined 10, 20 years ago?
Yeah, I still think it's in ways that we still can't imagine.
Still can't, yeah.
When we talk internally, the amount of data that we have in our systems it's incredible. So this is not a data gathering or data availability issue that most companies have. It's the organization of the data, because what's happened, for anybody who didn't start their company in the last 5 years probably, you had all these different systems that evolved over time, and every system generates data. And now you've got to go back and say, oh, you know what? Data is really important. Boy, we should analyze that data because it can help us make some really smart decisions. Now you got to go back and get that data. It's there, and you've got to start to organize it in a way that you can then analyze the data. And so I think a lot of companies today, they want to get to the analytics part. And we do a lot of analytics with data that we have, but we're still not to the point where we need to be as an organization. And I think most of corporate America isn't, where they need to be able to aggregate or bring together all the data they have to really do those full analytics. And that's something that we're working on. It's at the top of our list when we think about our IT needs, because that will be a difference. That will be a game changer. And we do a lot of it, but in the next decade, we'll be doing a lot more of it.
So maybe if they have a certificate in data analytics, they also probably
data
have
analytics?
a job.
Who has data analytics? All right, there you go.
Excellent. Really good. Well, it looks like Levi's got a question for you. Step on up, my friend. We've got Wendy behind you to help. Tech support.
There you go. Hi.
There we go.
Nope, back on step. So, speaking of data, my name is Levi. I am a senior in the College of Business Administration, focusing on HR management, and I'm currently taking a class on compensation. And I do have the certificate in data analysis, and there's been a lot of conversation across the country about pay disparities between executive boards and their lowest paid employees, or even some of their highest paid employees who just aren't a part of that executive team of CEO or COO. And I was curious about your opinion in particular as a CEO. Are CEOs paid fairly? Like, just in terms of the work they do?
Boy, that's a loaded question. Now that I sit, if you had asked me this a decade ago, I might have had a different answer. But knowing what I have to do and knowing the responsibility I have to so many people, and that I'm the face of the company, and everything essentially stops, the buck stops here, I would tell you that most CEOs, I'm not going to say the one that's making 60 or $100 million, but I think most CEOs are paid fairly. The other part to know is that there's a really disciplined process, right? A company doesn't get to just randomly pay a CEO what they could, right? But that wouldn't bode well with the shareholders. But there's a really disciplined process that the compensation committee of the board of directors goes through. They look at the peer set of companies, what's comparable, so that nothing ever really gets out of whack. I think the part that I worry about sometimes is, I don't know that we've solved, if people want to know the comparison of what Jim Snee makes versus somebody working on the plant manufacturing floor, they want to say, well, Jim makes 180 times what that person makes.
May I have a follow-up?
Well, hold on. What does that tell you? It tells you I make 180 times more than that person. Is that a good number or a bad number? Right? And I think there's some things there, if people really want to try to make that comparison, that hasn't been fully vetted out. And there has to be a better way to do it. I don't think we're there. I think it's being done for the wrong reasons today. And if you really want to get there, someone's going to have to spend more time and do more analytics on it. So yes, you can have a follow-up question.
Some are attributing this, I guess, widening pay gap to the fact that most average wages for jobs that aren't a CEO or COO being stagnant and not keeping up with inflation, whereas CEO or other executive members, their wages are rising to meet or exceed the rate of inflation. Is this deliberate in your opinion?
So can you say that again?
Most jobs don't increase their wages from year to year to even try to keep up with the rate of inflation. Most wages are stagnant, but this trend isn't as big of a problem with people who work as executives in their companies. Do you think that this is deliberate?
I don't think it's deliberate. I think they're very different pay structures. And some of it, as you look at my compensation, I have an element, what we call long-term compensation. And so it could be on the share price of the company. Obviously, the company has to perform, but there's a lot of external impact to the share price of a company. And so my compensation can go up and it can go down based on how the company does. And so that's when I don't think any of that's intentional when we think about how we're compensating executives versus others in the organization, because they really are based more on rates of inflation. What is the market value of the job? And again, I think there's, as you're probably learning, there's really well-defined processes that say what are the market values of a job. My job has a market value. I'm only worth so much to the company, right? And at some point, maybe I'm not worth that and somebody else can come do the job. So you have to be responsible in how you do that. And I do think HR or compensation committees, HR organizations, especially at the biggest publicly traded companies, have that pretty well dialed in. And you know, how we look at it in terms of discrimination, with especially gender discrimination, trying to understand where there's other points of potential discrimination. There's a lot of rigor and analysis that goes into pay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Great questions.
Really great questions.
Yeah.
Right? That's the hot seat, right? And you know, I think this question around compensation and potential for bonuses and promotion opportunity, those are questions that you all can ask when you're visiting the career fair and see what companies say, right? And you know, I know many people who are doing very well, and their salaries are keeping up. And then if maybe you're in a situation where it's not keeping up, there's many opportunities. Marche, my friend, what's your question?
Well, hello. Can you hear me? Should I get closer to the mic?
Yep, you're good.
Okay. Well, first and foremost, how are you?
I'm doing really well. How are you?
I'm awake, and that's about it.
Okay.
So my name is Marche. I am a hospitality management major, but I have a business minor, and that's why I get to be here. So my question is, given your track record with the amount of boards you sit on and the initiatives you take on, is the C-suite only reserved for exceptional people?
Oh.
So, and what year are you?
I'm a senior.
You're a senior. Okay, great. Thank you. I don't know if exceptional is the right word. I do think C-suites have to be, and I don't like the word reserved. I think the C-suite is an opportunity for highly qualified people. I really do. And just because you're not in the C-suite does not mean you're not qualified. And what I mentioned to you earlier was when you think about the diverse experiences that I've had in my career, getting sales, marketing, purchasing, international, other general management, getting visibility into so many parts of the company, so many people within the company, I would argue that I'm pretty well qualified, right? Up to all of you and my team members to decide if I'm exceptional. Your word, not mine. Because I do think you have to be qualified and you have to be competent, right? You want that at all levels of the organization, but you certainly need it at the most high levels of the organization. You absolutely can't have weak links because that's what everyone sees, that's what everyone aspires to, and that's the leadership that cascades down in the organization. So it's reserved for qualified, competent people, and all of you have the opportunity to get there.
Thank you.
Great question.
Hi, my name is Marie.
Can you get a little closer?
Yeah, I don't know. Is this on? Okay. My name's Marie. I'm a freshman in marketing. And you mentioned earlier that you're having some difficulty with employment, and I'm wondering if it's if you're having continued difficulties in this tight labor market.
I'm sorry, I missed. I said I was having difficulties with what?
In this tight labor market.
Oh, yeah. So what we've seen is it's really evolved. And so it started with keeping everybody safe, and especially in our plants, because they had to go to work every day. And then I said some people exited the workforce. There was some fiscal stimulus from the government that people might make some different decisions. So we weren't getting the same number of applicants. And then the third thing was when we were getting the applicants, because there were so many jobs available everywhere, that they may not stay very long. And there was no switching cost. Right? I come to work, I don't like this job, I'll walk out the door tomorrow and take another one down the street. And so it has forced us to do things differently in terms of how we're informing potential team members what the job is like, making sure that we have, solid onboarding approach, and making sure that people have an instant connection, maybe a buddy at work. Because we all know when you go somewhere new, it's easier when you know somebody. And so we're better today than we were a year ago, and it keeps getting better, but it's not easy. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great question.
Hello.
Throw it.
Oh, you do not want to see me throw it?
Hello, I'm Allison. I'm a sophomore in industrial engineering. So to revisit what you were talking about earlier, I just wanted to ask a quick question about the corporate social responsibility conversation. So you said that you feel that that is good business. It doesn't have to be a balance between CSR and good business because it is good business. So I was wondering what your thoughts are on creating shared value, that newer concept, and if you think that those are just going to naturally start blending together since there is a growing need for consumers to choose products and brands that are caring about those issues.
Yeah. No, and that was the point for the hand raising, because I think we've talked about that for a fairly long time. And I don't know that it's achieved the scale that many thought it would when some companies embarked for the first time on corporate social responsibility. And just because we're not at the levels that maybe you would think we would be, doesn't mean you stop. And so I think the work that we're doing and others are doing as companies is the right work to do. And I do think over time, more and more consumers will be making those decisions will be making purchasing decisions for those reasons. And so, yeah, it's not happening as quickly as many people thought, but it's still happening. And over time, it certainly will morph, without a doubt.
Thank you.
Hey, how's it going? My name is Mark Jones. I'm a marketing major, and I'm also a senior.
Okay.
So I suppose my question for you would be, how would you evaluate your leadership throughout your multiple positions throughout the company? Like Jim 15 years ago compared to Jim today, compared to Jim 30 years ago?
Yeah, that's a much different Jim. Jim had far fewer concerns 30 years ago. Actually, Jim's concern of 30 years ago were aligned with a lot of your concerns. But I said it earlier, and it probably wasn't as impactful. Maybe it'll be more, is when I think about Jim 30 years ago and what I didn't know and what I wondered if I would ever really learn, because there's always this element of self-doubt that creeps in. You know, I said, well, boy, that person's been here for 5 years. They're so smart. They know everything about the company. Listen how they talk to customers. Boy, I'll never be able to do that. But it was time, right? And with time, you get knowledge, and then you get that experience as well. And so it becomes this, in my mind, this natural evolution of confidence that builds. And then you have success. Maybe Alex finally got me that spreadsheet, right? And I was able to make the right decision to help drive something successful for the organization. And so success does breed success, without a doubt. And then the other part is we're still part of a team. And so Jim 30 years ago didn't get to set his career trajectory, right? You worked with others saw you, they recognized the good work, you got rewarded for it, and maybe you got promoted. And so it's all of those things, and I think as you go on that journey, you just naturally have a different point of view. The other thing you have is different responsibilities. Again, the Jim of 30 years ago was Jim running his own sales territory, only worried about hitting his sales goal that impacted my bonus. That's all Jim of 30 years ago worried about. Jim of 15 years ago had a team that he was responsible for, and maybe he had to onboard a new team member, had to train a new team member, was responsible for a sales goal that had a much bigger impact on a division of a company. And so, all those things just ladder up to Jim of today. And you're making sure that you make the most of all those opportunities along the way. Don't miss, because there's a learning. Everything you do, every day that goes by, every job that you have, there's a learning opportunity. Don't miss it. And that will be what will be foundational from Jim from 30 years ago to Jim today.
So what would you say is the best way to recognize what that insight would be for what you should do to be apart from your peers to stand out and get promoted?
I'm sorry, say that again?
What would you say is the key insight you had to to that mentality of just being able to I suppose being able to recognize that you need to do this particular thing for the corporate culture or for your team?
It sounds really basic, but we all have jobs to do. And regardless of the level in the organization is A, know what your job is, B, know what the expectations are of the people you work for and with. And then work really hard to meet those expectations. And so then, as you do that, again, it sounds really simple, it sounds really basic, but you'll realize in pretty short order that not everybody meets those expectations. And so as you're the one who's doing that and you're successful, time after time, you'll be recognized for that. And that's that journey that you start on, and it leads to new jobs, increasing levels of responsibility, all the things, more money, right? All the things that you're looking for in the job, and when you're starting out, those are the things that to me make the difference. And I have a phrase that I like to use, and I say it's not that hard, right? The job part, the actual work won't be that hard. So now I'm going to segue to what I do think will be hard. And for those of you who are heading off into the workplace, the transition to the workplace is really hard. It just is. You're meeting a whole bunch of new people. Your life experiences are different than the people that you're working with. Here you've got a university that's going to really embrace you and take care of you. And yeah, the company's going to do their best to do that, but that's hard. And so as you're thinking about this transition, just recognize how hard it is and give yourself some grace when you're making that transition, that there will be some tough days. And you'll say, why? This job's harder than I thought, or I don't have any friends. And I worked all day and now I go home to an empty apartment. That's hard, right? Give yourself permission for that to be okay. Because that time and experience that I talked about, that will be there before you know it. And that will solve a lot of those issues. Right? Don't make bad decisions in the moment. Give it some time, let it play out. And most importantly, give yourself the grace to say, this is hard. This is hard. And I would argue that what some of you are about to embark on is the toughest transition that you'll make in your life. Going from college to the workforce. You'll have others, right? You'll start, maybe you'll be in a relationship, you'll have a family. Those are all really hard, but this one to me is probably the hardest one that you do.
Cool. Thank you very much.
Yep, thank you.
Am I on? Great place for us to segue and end. Will you join me in thanking Mr. Snee for his remarks?
Thank you. Oh, can I open it?
Of course.
Tomorrow's my birthday.
It's breakable.
Do you want to sing happy birthday to me? I was serious. Who's going to start? One.
To you.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday.
Jim.
Happy birthday to you. All
right, well done.
We'll work on that.
I love it. I love it. This is my first trip to Kansas State. I will treasure this. I'll treasure this conversation. I will tell you, this is a special place. Just in very short order, you can tell what an incredible campus this is, what an incredible family that you all have, which leads to incredible opportunities. So congratulations to all of you for making such a great decision to be part of this. And thanks for being here today.
Perfect. Thank you.
I love it. Oh, it is.
I would just invite you again. We have a reception in the classroom two doors down. The world's largest charcuterie board is down there, if you want to look at that. We'll look forward to seeing you there.